Alice's condo. Sitting in the living room looking out to the lake. I'll go outside after a bit. This is her view from her lanai. Pan around. I think these two girls are known as the Reed girls. The one on the left is Jeanette, and the one on the right is Alice. They're two of a family of 5 kids. Sammy, her brother, was the oldest, and then Ruby, sister that died when she was 21, and Mary, she was killed in the car.
Then Alice, then Mary.
And then Mary, Mary was killed in a car wreck. Sammy was hit by a car and was killed.
In Flint, Michigan.
In Flint, Michigan. And Ruby died with pneumonia at the age of 21.
That was before penicillin.
So these two girls outlasted them all. Jeanette on the left is 81. Alice on the right is 92.
100.
Will be 93 in a couple of weeks. And they're tough nuts, all 2 of them.
I can't believe I'm 93.
Where were you born, Alice? You remember?
I think I was born in McKendree.
You have to talk louder so I can hear you.
It was
McKendree. Is that where? How long did Mom and Daddy live there? Do you know? Do you have any idea how long Mom and Daddy lived in McKendree?
I don't know. It was just a little town, and I don't know.
There was a hospital there. I remember the McKendree Hospital. But so you think you were born in McKendree?
No, I wasn't born in McKendree.
In McKendree, but you were born in the town of McKendree, right?
I don't know where I was born, Jeanette.
Okay.
Well,
don't take this, Richard. Jesus Christ.
Well, he don't.
No, I'm not taking a picture.
He's not taking it. He just got to turn. He just got to setting up there.
I want to look at it here first.
He's going to check. He's going to take a picture of your lake here, probably. What's your first child? What do you remember about your first? What's the first memory you have of your childhood? Where do you remember first? When you was just a little kid.
I don't remember when I was a little kid.
Well, now you're telling it. How about down Sandstone when Mom and Daddy lived in Sandstone and Mom told you? What'd she tell you?
Well, we lived on a railroad track and a river.
Yeah.
We lived at New River, the oldest river in the country, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she always told us not to.
What was the name of the river?
New River.
New River.
New River. And it was the oldest country, oldest.
You know that river now is a national river.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just like it used to be.
So what did Mom tell you kids? Don't do what?
Well, she always told us not to go near the railroad track. We lived along the railroad track, and then the railroad track was here, and we lived here, and the river was there.
Oh yeah.
Between it.
Did they have a falls on that river or something? Swift water?
Oh yeah, we had a falls that was pretty famous, you know.
Yeah.
Sandstone Falls.
Sandstone Falls.
And it was, I remember vaguely, this falls was high rocks, high cliff rocks that went clear across the river. And the water came down and poured over these falls and down. I mean, it was like real swift. And then if you got out there under those falls, I mean, it was very dangerous. I wonder if it's like that now, Richard.
I don't know. I don't know. It's probably got the rocks there, but I don't know whether the river is as big as it used to be with as much water in it or not. I don't know.
You know where we lived, see, the falls were down here.
Yeah.
And we lived up on the hill above those falls.
Yeah, and you could see down over the hill to those falls.
Almost,
Yeah.
and we could hear it.
Now that was after, we're getting ahead of ourselves. From Sandstone, when you lived at Sandstone, between the railroad track and the river, then Mom and Daddy must have moved to Hinton, right? Then they moved from Sandstone to Hinton.
No, I don't know. I think it was Quinny. We lived at Quinnymont or wherever Quinnymont was. We did there for.
Well, did you tell me one time you lived on 2nd Avenue?
Hinton.
In Hinton?
So when they moved from Sandstone
We lived
to,
on Temple Street.
On Temple Street. Oh, okay.
and that was Summers County. Summers County, West Virginia. And you and Mary went to school. Mom had her first heart attack before she was 35 years old, remember? And you and Mary was going to the grade school up there in Bell Point. Was it Bell Point?
I think so.
You and Mary where was Ruby? Ruby must have been there too.
No, not Bell Point. There was another school down in the curve there, I think.
But you went to grade school in Hinton some of your years, and then when Mom had her heart attack, you and Mary used to have, and she was in bed for if I remember correctly.
She had to have bed rest because there wasn't any penicillin and stuff.
Right, and like 6 weeks or something. And you and Mary would come home at noon and take care of Mom and go back to school. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we did, yeah.
And then the doctor told Mom, don't have any more kids because she'd had that heart attack. Then along comes me in 1930.
You said that like you didn't want to come back there.
40 years, Mom was 40 years old. She was too old to have a baby, but anyway. Then I was born in Hinton. And
you wasn't too old to get pregnant.
That's right. And then, now let's see, then the Depression came. The Depression crashed. It crashed in 29 and in 1930, and then when I was just a baby, we moved to Chestnut Mountain. Remember? When I was just a baby, because in that picture of Grandpa Kales's house,
we lived at Hinton one time.
That's and then that's right. That's where we are now. Then the Depression came. And we moved out on Chestnut Mountain. Daddy lost his job on the railroad. There was no work, 1930. And I was just a baby. Because I remember that picture of all of them on the porch of Grandpa Kales's house and the old mule tied up to the corner post. Mom had me in her arms, and I looked like I was maybe 9 months old or something. And remember, I was evidently crawling in the kitchen of Grandpa Kales's house, and they had an oil, we used to call it oilcloth, tablecloth, what do they call it now? Anyway, it's like plastic today. And I got hold of that tablecloth and pulled a tea kettle of boiling water off on me. You remember that?
Vaguely.
Poured a tea kettle of water on.
Where did it burn you?
Oh, they said I had a little white dress on, and said that dress stuck to my back. I was burned so badly. And then what happened?
Did you go to high school at Sandstone?
Mm-hmm.
Alice?
We got to finish Chestnut Mountain.
Yeah, well, but I was going to ask that.
Oh, okay.
Well, we went to, I went to school at Bell Point, or where was it? Was it Bell Point, or was it up the other way?
Up a little higher.
Yeah.
Should have talked a little louder.
Well, then when we were out on Chestnut Mountain with Daddy and Mommy and everybody, our whole family went to Chestnut Mountain to live with Grandpa Cales from Hinton.
Yeah, we've never had a depression like that before. After that, nobody had any work.
And you went to that school. You went to that school out from Grandpa Cales' house, and we have pictures of it, of that school
On Chestnut Mountain.
on Chestnut Mountain.
Irene Bragg taught school. It was from from first grade to 7th or 8th grade, and I was in 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And she taught school. And then after that we moved to Hinton, I think. That's when after that we moved to Hinton.
No, we were at Hinton before Chestnut Mountain. We moved from Hinton to Chestnut Mountain. And then our Grandpa Cales, remember the fields that they had, and I guess it was Uncle Luther's boys and probably Daddy and who knows who else working in the fields. And there was a big dinner bell outside on a post, and they'd ring that dinner bell for the workers to come in to lunch. To them it was dinner. Then it was supper.
You remember all that? I didn't remember that.
Well, do you remember up there? Did you have running water?
We didn't have any running water.
Where was the water?
It was down over a hill, and there was a path down over the hill. You went down over the hill, and then you curve around, and underneath that hill was the water that came out of the mountain. We carried water up that hill.
You had to carry it up?
And then we also caught rainwater in barrels.
Yeah.
For the washing and stuff like that. But we had to carry drinking water up that hill in buckets.
Oh.
And remember the still under the hill?
No, the still wasn't under the hill.
It was down under the hill there. Yeah, Grandpa Cales made moonshine, and that's the way we survived the Depression. There were some people in Hinton that had a little bit of money, and they would come out to Grandpa Cales's and buy moonshine, and they said he had the best moonshine that was ever made. And he made moonshine and fed his family, selling moonshine. Now that used to be a dark secret, but now that's a part of our heritage, and I'm kind of proud of it.
Really, Jim?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we survived. That's the way we survived.
Did you have a horse?
Yeah, he was white, his name was Barney.
Yes.
Barney.
That's right.
Who rode that horse? You and your mother?
That was Grandpa Cales's horse.
Grandpa Cales's horse?
I remember my mother and I, Mom on the horse and me behind her holding on and going over to see Miss Dixon. Remember that old Miss Dixon that lived around the ridge there? Miss Dixon. My goodness, we went to see that woman, and
what'd you go see her for?
she was somewhere to go. She was a neighbor. Yeah, but I can remember riding behind old Barney.
So you moved to Sandstone. After that?
Yeah, we moved down there at Sandstone where we could look down over and almost see the falls on the hill there between Sandstone and Hinton. And I can remember. Do you remember when we moved down there?
Was that before we lived at Hinton?
No, that was after Hinton. It was Sandstone, then Hinton, then Chestnut Mountain, and then back to Sandstone up on between Sandstone and Hinton. Up there by Rosetti's house, remember? Up there by Rosetti's house. Remember our old house there?
Yeah. But I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember it in that stage or in that. I don't know.
And it was hard times. I remember. I guess Sammy and Daddy.
It was the worst depression we've ever had. You know, nobody was working.
Daddy was called back to work on the railroad, and that's why we moved down there. He was called back to work on the railroad, so we moved down there. And I can remember.
Down to where?
In that old house that we used to live in there, beside Rosetti.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You remember that?
I remember the house.
Yeah. Well, we moved from Chestnut Mountain.
Did you ever hoe corn?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. And we cleared out
new ground.
We cleared out woods and made a new ground. Made a field.
Mm-hmm.
Or brush or whatever it was, you know, made a field. And some of them was so steep that when you step on them, you slide out. You slide down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
The ground was very soft. And you just step and you'd slide down. It seems to me like it did. I don't know.
So
they cleared the woods. They cleared the woods, and I can remember, and I was just a little kid, less than 5 years old.
The ground was soft.
We picked rocks off that field, cut the trees down, pulled the stumps out, and burned them, and made a cornfield out of that field.
Did we really? She remembers more than I do.
well, and from there you went to high school down at Sandstone, right? You walked down that hill every day and back to school?
Walked to Sandstone. Yeah, by that time Alice was in high school or junior high. Yeah, there was no bus. We didn't have a bus. We walked walked to high school. Walked to school. Remember? Walked down the road to school.
Did you have a boyfriend when you were going to high school? Huh?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I didn't have a boyfriend until it was Bill.
Didn't have a boyfriend until you met Bill?
I don't remember, Jeanette, whether... I know there was a road, and it wasn't hard road. I don't think. I think it was just road.
It was a dirt road, and now listen to this. I know you're going to remember this. The prisoners from Moundsville built that road, remember? Mm-hmm. And they were working up above our house on that road. I can still see all those prisoners. I don't know how they got down from Moundsville, but the prisoners built that road from Sandstone to Hinton. Anyway, you walked from.
I know that Mommy was worried about us.
Yeah, with those prisoners.
Those prisoners would want to talk to you, and we wasn't allowed to talk to them.
And they wasn't allowed to. The guards. They had guards standing there guarding them.
I don't think we had much. Well, I'm sure we didn't have much to do with them. We just passed them and never even talked to them.
No,
they was building that road then.
Well, I keep hearing about your grandma and grandfather Reed, but I don't hear much about your grandma Kales.
Well, our grandmother Kales, she was a McClung. Remember? She was a McClung.
She died.
And I remember Ed telling it. You and I was there at Ed's one time by ourselves, and Ed telling us that our grandmother McClung got on the horse and rode to see her parents. And it seems to me that her people lived in Clay County, and she rode that horse from Grandpa Cales's out on the mountain to Clay County to see her parents.
See, I don't remember a thing about that.
Well, you wouldn't remember it, but it told you and I that. And she died, and I asked it what happened to her. It didn't really know. She thought it was diphtheria or something, but she evidently died suddenly. And then, somehow, I don't know how Grandpa Cales ever met her. I never heard that story. But somehow, Grandpa Cales got mixed up with this Abby Price, remember? Mm-hmm. Our mother did not like her stepmother at all. And she was kind of weird or strange or whatever. No, we didn't like her. Our mother didn't like her for some reason. But Rossetti seemed to get along with her okay. But anyway, her name was Abby Price when she married Grandpa Cales. Oh, then where did we go?
What was your father's name?
Our father's name was Stuart Preston Reed, and our mother was Roxy Ann Cales Reed. Our grandparents was
Henry Cales.
Henry Cales was our grandfather Cales. Our grandmother was.
We never knew.
What was our grandmother's name? I can't remember.
We never knew his first name.
Adelaide was our grandmother's name. Adelaide.
Might have been. We never knew her.
No, she died when Mom and it was in their teens.
Mm-hmm.
She died when they were in their teens.
Who died first, your grandfather Cales or your mother?
Our grandfather Cales.
What killed him?
There was three deaths in a month. Grandpa Cales and Uncle Arthur, which was Mom's brother, lived out on Chestnut Mountain by themselves, remember? And Uncle Luther came in one day from hunting, laid down behind the pot-bellied stove, went to sleep, and never woke up.
That was Arthur, wasn't
That was
it?
Arthur. That was about the last week of February.
Well, you said Luther, but it was Arthur.
No, it was Uncle Arthur, not Luther, Uncle Arthur. And then that was the last week of February, 1938. Then Daddy went to help dig his grave. There was no such thing as grave diggers up at that time. Daddy went to help dig his grave, and Daddy had a cold. It was raining and spitting snow and cold and nasty, and Daddy took pneumonia. Daddy died then the 13th of March, which was like about 2 weeks later. Then, on the 22nd of March,
She remembers all that, and I don't.
on the 22nd of March, then, our sister Ruby came down with pneumonia.
And this one,
And she died the 22nd of March. So, and here's our mother with congestive heart failure, lost her brother, her husband, and her daughter within a month. There was no penicillin back then. If there had been, Ruby and Daddy both would have lived.
That's just,
you remember more than I did, Jeanette.
hey, I'm going to stop.
Well, I remember more than you do probably, but I'm forgetting a lot too, and we'll probably forget a lot of this stuff to tell. Where were we?
The only thing I can remember is carrying water up that hill. There wasn't any water in the house.
Oh Lord, no! We didn't have an indoor toilet. We had an outdoor John.
And we had to carry water up that hill.
Well, and when we moved back down to Sandstone after Daddy went to work, we carried water from the spring.
Well, when we moved up there to live there, Daddy built a privy, outhouse, or whatever. And we went to that. I knew he had a board like this, and he had 2 holes. and it was enclosed place where we could go to the bathroom.
Well, then after Mom
But
died,
had terrible times.
yeah, it was not. It was hard times. These kids and these people.
Did you have a radio?
Eventually.
I think Grandpap Kales had a radio, didn't he?
But he had an old crank up Victrola. Grandpa Kales liked music apparently. He had an old crank Victrola, we called him, and he had a pump organ. You know, you pump the thing with your foot. And when he died, Rosetti got that stuff. She got the organ, all that stuff, and his farm too. Now what was I going to say? I lost my chain of thought.
How come she got? Well, I didn't want it anyway. Was we living in Hinton then?
No, we were living in down on the hill there between Sandstone and Hinton, next to Rosetti. And there was a field between our house and Rosetti's. Remember? Remember that Rosetti's house was that red, sort of a red
I don't know whether
stain?
you're in. I don't know.
Let's see, where was I?
You were in the.
So how long did you?
Well, after we were up to the point where where our Uncle Arthur and Daddy and Mom died, and Ruby died, and then a year later, Mom died. Mom died then in October 1939. I had just turned 8 or 9. Then Mom died a year after Daddy died. About a year and a half, I guess it was, after Daddy died. Remember? Well, you had graduated. Daddy died in March, and you graduated in May, and then you went to work for Aunt Myrtle, and you and Bill come and got you one night, and you and Bill eloped. Eloped and went to Fairmont and got married. And then in March, Daddy died.
Did Bill have a girlfriend when he met you?
When Bill met me,
Yeah. Did he have a girlfriend?
who Bill?
Yeah.
He used to go with my first cousin,
Oh, you used to go with your first cousin.
And who was that?
Francis Kales.
Francis Kales.
So you stole him away, huh? Oh, I bet you did. Stole him
And he
away.
never regretted it.
And never regretted it.
He never regretted it.
You stole him away and you jumped out the window and off you went, huh, to Fairmont. Eloped to Fairmont.
Yeah,
Well, now that's a good love story right there.
yeah.
Now, where did you go when you went to Fairmont that night? This all happened at night. Where did you go? Did you go to Glenn and Laura's, or did you go
I think we stayed with Glenn and Laura.
I believe you did too.
Glenn and Laura was good to us. Well, see, it was Bill's brother
Yeah.
and Laura, and we got along, and we stayed with them until we got a place of our own. We rented a place on Quincy Street, I think. I don't know whether that was the next thing or not.
Yeah, that was your first. Yeah, that was your first home, on an apartment on Quincy Street
In Fairmont.
in Fairmont.
No, in Hinton.
No, it was in Fairmont, Alice. You went to Fairmont, remember, after you was married?
So in the meantime, she went to Fairmont. She got out of Sandstone. So what happened to you?
What happened to me? Well, then Mom died, and then Alice and Bill, bless their hearts, here they are, newlyweds. They took me home with them.
We had a 2-room apartment.
Yeah,
And Jeanette had a cot in the kitchen.
yep.
She slept on a cot.
And that apartment, the roaches was so thick.
Yeah, we got out of there.
Go in at night and turn the light on. The roaches were. There were so many roaches in that apartment that you and Bill would spray and sweep them up on a dustpan. And from there, where did you go? Where did you move to?
We went to another place there in Hinton.
No, you're in Fairmont, Alice.
I mean,
You went to another place in Fairmont. Out at Watson, remember? You went from there. Where'd you move after Quincy Street? You moved to Watson. Remember Doc and Irma lived in that house? Dr. Mine and Irma?
we rented from a Mrs. Jarrett
Yeah, right.
in Watson, but I don't remember. Let's see, I know we lived there. Mrs. Jarrett rented us a kitchen and bedroom upstairs in her house.
Mm-hmm.
She owned a big house there. It was a nice home. And it was next door to Irma Bate and Dr. Munn.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, where did we go from then? We went to somewhere, like Ballinger Street or some, we went to we got an apartment.
You're still in Fairmont.
Still on
You
our
moved from Mrs. Jarrett's.
But we got another place to live.
You remember Locust Avenue? Remember the place on that?
We lived in Ballinger Street first, I think.
That's in Kent. You're in Hinton. You're in Fairmont now. You moved from Mrs. Jarrett's out at Watson.
She knows more about than I do.
You moved from you lived at you rented an apartment from Mrs. Jarrett out in Watson, and from there you moved out to Locust Avenue. Remember the apartment on 3rd floor in Locust Avenue? 898, was it? What was your address there on Locust Avenue?
That sounds familiar.
Was it 898 Locust Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
You was up on 3rd floor, had an apartment up on 3rd floor.
Somebody told me one time you ran around in the house and out on the porch in your panties and Bill in his shorts.
Mm-hmm. It was so hot we couldn't have we didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, you didn't have air conditioning?
Oh no.
Good Lord.
No, there wasn't any air conditioning back then.
No, there wasn't any back then. Who was your neighbor there at that place that made pickle beans all the time?
Oh, that was Donna Bradshaw.
Oh, Bradshaw, yeah.
Was that then? I don't know.
That was on Locust Avenue.
Locust Avenue.
Well, yeah, I guess it was. We lived in an apartment there. We rented from Mrs. Ritchie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. And she was Richie, too.
She was a rich bitch.
she was. Huh.
Yeah, you used to go out to CV News, remember?
Get our beer, sit on the front porch and drink it.
Why did you get a beer in a jar or jug or what?
Get it in a jug, a fruit jar.
A fruit jar.
A half a gallon or a gallon fruit jar.
Is that
Half
right?
a gallon maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
We sit on the porch and drink it.
Yeah. Sit on the porch and drink it. That sounds like a good thing.
Oh, it was good beer. It was good beer. Come right out of a keg. You know
Your
that,
draft beer.
that beer's the best beer there is.
Yeah. Especially when it was so hot you couldn't put your clothes on, and a
Yeah.
good cold glass of beer would really taste good.
Yeah, I
wouldn't
know.
it? Yeah.
It was on the 3rd floor. We lived, I think it was
Yeah, I
like the
remember
3rd
that.
floor.
I
There was the
remember
1st
that.
floor,
Yeah, I
second, and
remember
we was
that
on the 3rd
apartment.
floor.
I remember the outside of it. I don't remember the inside of it.
Well, Mrs. Ritchie had a big home in front,
Oh,
and her sister had a big home right on the corner.
mm-mm.
The Ritchies and whoever lives on the corner, they were the wealthy, cold people there in this town.
And you lived there on Locust Avenue quite a few years. And then you moved.
I don't know how many years we lived there.
It was a few years,
But
maybe.
it was so hot, we moved out there.
Where did you go from Locust Avenue? Where'd you move to?
No. Well, didn't we move to Ballinsey Street?
Fleming? Fleming?
Fleming Street? I don't know.
Does the word Fleming ring a bell? Fleming Avenue?
Fleming Avenue, yeah. Yep, rings a bell.
You bought a house there, didn't you? You bought that house.
I don't remember what, Richard, what we were wealthy enough to buy it then or
You
not.
bought a house on Fleming Avenue.
Yeah.
The gray shingle house, remember? That's where you moved from down here.
Was that then? Back then? Well, I think you're getting ahead of yourself.
No. You bought that place on Fleming Avenue. If I remember right, it was 1106.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it was? And
Since
you had
mentioned it, I remembered.
yeah. And you had a garage out back, and you drove the car through the back of the garage.
And the garage cost you more than you paid for the house. You paid, I think you paid, if I remember, you paid $5,000 for that house, and it cost you more than $5,000 to build that garage that you went through the back end of.
Which house was that?
Fleming Avenue.
In Fairmont.
Next to Elizabeth Davidson, next to Elizabeth Davidson, and what was her name? Dave lived next door. You lived between Dave and what was her name? And Mrs.
She lived, Captain Brown was one side.
Captain and Brown and Mrs. Brown was on one side.
And your neighbor on the right side, I don't remember her name. Do you? Alice? You remember her
I
name.
can't remember what
Her name?
Captain Brown?
Browns lived next door to you on Fleming Avenue.
Fleming Avenue? I think you're getting ahead of yourself or something. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see.
Where did you live when you moved to Florida? Well, I'm getting way ahead of myself now.
Where did you live before you lived here?
You lived in Fairmont, right?
I guess. But where was it?
Fleming Avenue. On Fleming Avenue.
Is that where it was?
This is not the right time, I don't think.
Okay, let's see. Let's stop this thing for a minute and see
I don't
what.
remember.
Well, that wasn't
We didn't
hard.
have nothing until I went to work and both of us working.
Oh, well.
That's the God's truth.
Where did
I had
you
to
work?
I had to go to work to get
Where,
to make a living.
you worked at Hartley's with a department store? Then you worked for the school system
Worked
someday.
for the school system first. No, maybe was it first or last, Jeanette?
No, you worked for you worked for a seamstress. Worked for a seamstress. Did alterations, and from there you went to Hartley's, didn't you?
Maybe I know I worked.
You worked at Hartley's. You remember that? Now think.
Well, I know I did, but
You remember.
when did I work for a seamstress?
Before you went to Hartley's. That's when you first went to work.
Who was she?
Some dress shop there in Fairmont.
Oh, dress shop.
But that was when you first went to work. You first got your taste of work was at doing alterations for this dress shop.
I guess so.
And they thought you did a wonderful job and they didn't want you to leave. But you left there and went to Hartley's.
Well, they didn't pay me much, and then when I went to Hartley's, they didn't pay me either.
And then somehow you got a job as a teacher's aide. What was the name of that school? Where you were teacher's aide?
I guess, I don't know. Let's see, where was that? Is that in Hinton?
No, that's Fairmont, Alice.
Oh, Fairmont. Shit, you know more about that than I do. I don't know about that stuff. I forgot. It was in Fairmont, and
It was at, was it Miller School? Out on, was it Virginia Avenue?
I went to Miller School. I was no aide in Miller School. I was a little kid.
I went to Miller School when I was living with you that one year. I went to Miller School. And you was teacher's aide. And I think that
When
was...
you stayed with me, I was married.
That's right.
I wasn't going to school. I
yeah.
married Bill.
That's right. I was the one that was in school. But anyway, you were teacher's aide. You was a teacher's aide for 10 years, I think. And you have a little retirement from Marion County.
I don't have no such a thing.
Remember, you worked.
So Jeanette, you after your mother died, you was with Alice a little bit, and then you went back to Sandstone. You lived with your grandmother and grandfather,
No.
Reed.
No, I didn't. After I lived with Alice and Bill about a year and a half, and then I went to. They took me to Rosetti's one summer, and I was staying with Rosetti, which was Mom's sister.
That's so you could go to Sandstone High School.
Rosetti Kales, yeah,
Wasn't it?
yeah, right, and then I stayed with Rosetti a little while, and then Sammy got married. Sammy married Beulah. Oh gosh! And Sammy wanted me to come and live with him then, and Beulah agreed to it, but she hated my guts with a passion.
She hated both of us.
Oh, she hated my guts, and she'd do everything she could to get Sammy to be mad at me, but anyway. I stayed with them a while, and Sammy was a drinker.
Where was I then? Oh,
You were in Fairmont. You stayed in Fairmont. You and Bill was living in Fairmont, and Sammy and Beulah had been down to the beer joint in Sandstone. We had this one, what we call them the beer joint in Sandstone. They had been down there, and I was there in that house by myself. Up on that mountain, and we had hobos going, which is homeless people now, going by. I was scared to death. It was night. I was scared to death, and I had the door locked. And Sammy came in. Remember? No, you don't remember. Sammy came in, and I had the door locked, and he got upset with me. He was half drunk. Got upset with me because I had the door locked. And he got mad at me and he said, "You get your stuff and get out of here." I guess he thought I wouldn't do it. But I packed up my stuff, an armload, that was all I had. I packed up myself, packed up my stuff, and I walked out of there. And I went over and woke up Rosetti. It was midnight. 12 of midnight. Went over and woke Rosetti up and told her what had happened. And she put me on a little day bed there in the bedroom. And the next morning she said, "You go over to Miss Reed." She called Grandma Reed Miss Reed. It must have been a weekend, maybe. Must have been a weekend. Yes, it would have been, because Sammy was down at the beer joint and he was home for the weekend. She said, "You go over to Miss Reed's and see if you can stay over there." So the next day I hightailed it over to Grandma's and told Grandma what had happened. And Grandma said, "You get your clothes and you come over here. You can stay here." Well, Grandma had wanted me to come to live with her before, and I wouldn't do it because I knew I was going to have to go over there and milk cows and everything else. I wouldn't go. But I had to beg. I had to bow down and beg. I had to humble myself and beg. So Grandma said, "You get your clothes and come over here and you can live here." So I gathered up my clothes again. And I went over to Grandma and Grandpa's. And I stayed there. I was 11 years old when I went to live with Grandma and Grandpa. And I stayed there, went to school, until I finished high school. And Grandma and Grandpa lived up on the creek then, up on Laurel Creek.
We had a hell of a life when we was growing up.
Yeah, but it made us what we are, Alice. It made us what we are. But Grandma and Grandpa then sold that farm to a couple from Chicago. They came in there and wanted to buy that farm. But this guy worked on the railroad in Chicago, and he was going to leave her there. There was some mystery there, but anyway, he was going to leave. Her name was Irene Smith, and she was going to stay there, and he was going back to Chicago. But she wouldn't stay there by herself, and she wasn't going to buy that farm unless I stayed with her. She didn't want to stay there by herself. Well, I didn't want to stay with this strange woman. Grandma said, "You have to, or you have to. You can't go down with us. You have to stay with her, or we can't sell this place." So I wound up staying with Irene Smith for a while. She was good to me. And I lived with her, I don't know how long, not very long. And then I guess May left and went somewhere. Grandma's and Grandpa's two daughters, May and Eva, lived with them also. And May left somewhere, went somewhere, and then Eva had tuberculosis, and she went to the sanitarium in Beckley. Back then, you didn't stay home with tuberculosis; you had to go to a sanitarium. And then Grandma wanted me. Then she didn't have anybody to. Grandma was kind of lazy. She didn't have anybody to.
Kinda. She was plain lazy.
She didn't have anybody to help her, so then she wanted me to come down. So I went down and Grandma and Grandpa had bought the Graham house there on the hill where Bill's parents. In fact, I think they bought that house from Bill's parents. So I went down there, and that's where I was when I finished high school. But during the summer,
Don't talk so loud. They're hearing you down there.
I remember. Let's see. I don't remember when I started going to Fairmont during the summer. I was 12 years old, I think. And let me see. Let me think about it.
Do you remember all that? I don't remember. You know, our life, our life was so terrible. After Mommy and Daddy died, I mark stuff out of my mind. I forget about it. I don't want to think about it.
You don't even want to remember it, huh?
No.
You don't want to remember your childhood and your your heritage and your life?
What kind of a childhood and a life did we have when we said, what the hell did we have that we want to remember? I don't want to remember that shit. It's gone and forever. I don't want to remember it. I knew we had a hell of a time, so what? It's gone. It's over. We've made a life for our own. I'm just sad that Bill's gone. He's not with me. But he is, and I'm living alone, and I make it. And if I hadn't worked when I did, I wouldn't have as much to live on as I have now. I'm damn glad that I worked.
Yeah, I think you get about $250 a month for your retirement, don't you?
Bill doesn't care for me working. He said, "Mom, if you want to work, go and work. I don't care." So I did. I worked.
Good for you.
So, where did you live when Billy was born, your son?
When Billy was born?
Was you on Locust Avenue?
You remember where you were living when Billy was born?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. Where the hell did I live? God, I don't know. Do you remember?
You lived on Locust Avenue. Remember you had the...
I probably did, but we rented from Mrs. Ritchie. Yeah, that's probably right. And it was so hot, it was on the 3rd floor, no air condition. And we got the hell out of there and went somewhere else. Where did we go then?
I don't think you're going to be able to hear that on the...
No,
You're not going to be able to hear it.
well, might be able to.
I don't want my neighbors here, no.
You don't want the neighbors to hear about our hard times?
It's none of their business, Jeanette. None of their business.
None of their business.
Damn right.
Okay, wait a minute.
Well, we were talking about Billy and Linda was Susie. Billy was born on Locust Avenue. Susie was born on Fleming Avenue. We've done that. We've been over that already. And what I started to say was our summers. I would go to Fairmont during the summer, and Bill was in Germany or something. No, Bill was overseas.
Bill Bainbridge.
Bill Bainbridge was in the Army. No, it was the Army or the Air Force.
The Army.
But Bill Bainbridge was in the Army, and he was overseas, and Mary was there with a 9-month-old baby. And I went out and tried to get a job. And they had the child labor laws during the war, 1945. And I went out and put my hair back to look old, and I was too young to get a job. And put on a dress to make me look older. And went out trying to get a job. Went to dry cleaners and everywhere. They knew I wasn't of age.
How old were you?
So nobody would hire me. So Mary went to work at the telephone company, and I stayed home that summer and kept Ricky. Remember Alice? Mm-hmm. Kept Ricky. Ricky was 9 months old, and I stayed home and kept Ricky that summer. And Mary made enough money to get me ready for school and paid off all her bills, working at the phone company. And I stayed home, kept house, and took care of Ricky. How old was I? Must have been, what was the child labor law then? I must have been 13 or 14. Maybe 15, no. 13 or 14 years old, I guess. And I kept Ricky that summer. Then the next summer, I got a job in Hinton. Went up and stayed with Nita Gooch, which was Daddy's sister, and her husband, and I got a job at Fred Webb's in a grocery store. And I worked there the next summer. And then the next summer, what did I do? Then I worked in a restaurant. Between my junior and senior year, I worked in Martin's Restaurant in Fairmont. Kept all of my tips. And back then, it was a nickel tip. If you got 10 cents, buddy, you got a big tip. And I saved all of my tips, and you and I took them up to the bank. Remember? Mm-hmm. I took them up to the bank, and they put all my tips through the machine. I had $200. So that was my school money for the next year. I had enough money out of that $200 to buy my books, my graduation announcements, my class ring, bought my graduation clothes, and had $50 to take to, the senior class took a trip to Washington, D.C., and I had $50 to spend in D.C. on that trip. And then I had enough money left out of that $200 to get me to Fairmont. I had just barely enough to get to pay my way to Fairmont. And I was afraid I'd run short, so I went down and borrowed $2 from Judy Gillen. And she knew I was leaving town, but she loaned me the $2. When I got to work, I paid Judy back my $200.
$2.
$2. Paid her my $2. Sent her my $2. And now what, Alice?
I wonder what you did. I was with you.
Now tell me something that you don't tell anybody. Tell me a secret, Alice.
Hmm?
You say you know something you don't tell anybody. Well, tell me something.
Yeah, just about. I don't talk about my past, Richard.
No.
Because you know what? I don't talk about my past because it's no good.
You better cut it off and wait till he gets going. She doesn't want anybody to hear.
Yeah.
What's Susan doing?
Linda should be here. I talked to her. We've both been doing errands today, and she went to her yoga or whatever exercise she had, and she's been doing stuff. It's amazing how you can be retired and be so busy.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Holy mackerel. Busy. We're busy doing nothing. That's what we are. We are busy doing nothing.
Well,
Jeanette's going to have this puddle finished before she leaves here.
looks pretty good, doesn't it?
So we'll end this thing up by saying we're at Alice's condo in Naples, Florida.
Hmm?
And if we think of something else, we'll just do an addition. How about that?
To be continued.
To be continued.
It's April 15th.
April, yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to figure a while ago what the day it is.
Yeah.